Welcome to Breaking Bulletin, your go-to source for the latest updates on news, documentaries, and global insights. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe to stay informed with the most recent developments happening both locally and internationally. Now, let's get into today's discussion. This week, two major developments occurred that, at first glance, might not seem connected, but on closer inspection, reveal an important and underlying trend in the global economy. First, in New Brunswick, Canada, Irving Paper, a key player in the Canadian paper industry, made a significant announcement. The company revealed it would be closing half of its operations in the province, a move that will undoubtedly have a major impact on the local economy. Meanwhile, on the same day, Apple made waves with the announcement of a massive $500 billion United States dollars investment plan in the United States. This massive infusion of funds into the U.S. economy is being seen as a signal of the shifting tides in global business and economic strategies. Now, you might be wondering, what could these two events possibly have in common? How do the struggles of an iconic paper company in Canada relate to Apple's massive investment in the U.S.? The answer lies in the bigger picture, the changes in economic policy driven by U.S. President Donald Trump and how they are affecting business environments both in the U.S. and abroad. While most of the focus has been on the potential impact of Trump's tariffs on Canadian exports, a more subtle and perhaps more significant threat is the way his administration is reshaping the U.S. economy to become more business-friendly, which in turn is influencing global investments and business decisions. Let's first take a closer look at Irving Paper. The closure of half of its operations in New Brunswick is not just a business decision based on rising energy costs, as the company has stated. The paper industry has faced challenges for years now, with factors like fluctuating raw material prices and labor costs putting pressure on many companies. But there's something deeper at play here. The decision to scale back operations is happening at a time when the U.S. is actively reshaping its business environment to attract investment and create a more competitive landscape for businesses. This is where the Trump administration's policies come into play. Trump's focus on cutting taxes and reducing regulations has been a key feature of his economic agenda since he took office. From the moment he became president, Trump has been focused on making the U.S. a more attractive place for business. Through a series of executive orders, he's taken steps to lower corporate taxes and reduce burdensome regulations on businesses across industries. This includes a particular focus on energy production, where Trump has aimed to increase domestic energy output, reduce costs, and create a more favorable environment for energy-dependent industries. In fact, Trump created a White House panel dedicated to achieving energy dominance, signaling just how seriously his administration is prioritizing this sector. On top of these regulatory changes, Trump has pushed for tax cuts for corporations. This is an effort to make the U.S. a more appealing place for global companies to invest. The impact of these changes is already being felt in the corporate world. U.S. CEOs are reporting a surge in optimism, and confidence in the American economy is growing rapidly. A recent survey from the Conference Board showed a dramatic increase in optimism among CEOs, jumping 9 points in just the first quarter of this year. So, it's no surprise that companies like Apple are committing billions of dollars to invest in the U.S., seeing it as an increasingly favorable environment for their business operations. However, while this shift towards a more business-friendly environment in the U.S. may be good for American companies, it's creating challenges for Canada. As Trump's policies continue to reshape the American economy, Canadian businesses are left grappling with a growing sense of uncertainty. And it's not just the potential tariffs that are causing concern. As we saw with Irving Paper's decision to close its operations, there's a broader concern about the competitiveness of Canada's business environment. In contrast to the United States, which is actively working to make itself more attractive to businesses, Canada's regulatory and taxation environment is seen as less favorable. The concerns about the Canadian business climate aren't just speculative, they are backed by hard data. According to economists like Ross McKittrick, Canada is struggling to keep pace with the changes happening in the U.S. He argues that Canada is losing its competitive edge, particularly in industries that are energy intensive. The U.S. is increasingly seen as a more favorable place to do business, while Canada's regulatory framework is often viewed as restrictive, making it more difficult for companies to invest and operate efficiently. At the same time, there are other factors at play. Canada's energy sector, for instance, has seen a decline in investment in recent years. In particular, investments in oil and gas extraction have been falling since the price drop in 2014. Even though oil prices have recovered somewhat since then, investments in the sector remain below pre-2014 levels. A report from the Fraser Institute highlights how Canada's regulatory environment is one of the reasons behind this decline. With issues like environmental regulations, land claims, and the costs associated with regulatory compliance, many investors are looking elsewhere, particularly to the United States, where regulations are more business-friendly. What's also concerning is the growing uncertainty in Canada's economic environment. This is where the tariffs become a crucial factor. Trump's proposed tariffs on Canadian exports, if implemented, could have a severe impact on Canada's economy. According to a Bank of Canada analysis, a blanket 25% tariff on Canadian goods could result in a 2.5% decline in Canada's GDP in the first year, followed by another 1.5% drop in the second year. While this might not lead to an immediate crisis, the long-term effects could be devastating for Canadian industries, particularly those that rely heavily on exports to the U.S. Despite this, some argue that Canada has faced much worse economic challenges in the past. Economists like McKittrick point out that Canada has experienced several recessions and other economic shocks that were more severe than the potential effects of Trump's tariffs. However, the current level of uncertainty surrounding Canada's economic future is unprecedented. The Economic Policy Uncertainty Index for Canada has skyrocketed in recent years, and this uncertainty is further exacerbated by the looming threat of tariffs and trade tensions with the U.S. This uncertainty, McKittrick argues, is what is truly undermining Canada's ability to attract investment and maintain economic stability. So, what does this all mean for Canada's economic future? How can Canada adapt to this shifting global landscape, where the U.S. is actively working to make itself a more attractive place to do business, while Canada seems to be falling behind? There are several strategies that experts like Steve Ambler, a professor emeritus at the University of Quebec, suggest Canada should pursue. First, he argues that Canada must eliminate interprovincial trade barriers. These barriers have long been a hindrance to economic growth in Canada, and removing them could have a significant positive impact on the country's GDP. A report by Deloitte Canada shows that removing these trade barriers could increase Canada's GDP by as much as 3.8%. Furthermore, Ambler suggests that Canada should prioritize building cross-country pipelines to open up new markets for its oil and gas resources. By creating better infrastructure for energy transportation, Canada could increase its competitiveness in the energy sector and reduce its reliance on the U.S. as the primary market for its energy products. This, in turn, could help mitigate the impact of any future tariffs on energy exports. Another key area where Canada can improve is by addressing its regulatory environment. McKittrick, for example, believes that Canada should focus on reducing taxes and regulatory burdens, especially in sectors that would be more heavily impacted by U.S. tariffs, by making the business environment more favorable for both domestic and foreign companies. Canada could begin to reverse the trends that are currently hindering its competitiveness. At the end of the day, the threat of Trump's tariffs and the broader changes in U.S. economic policy are serious issues for Canada, but they are not insurmountable. With the right policies and strategies in place, Canada can adapt and continue to thrive in an increasingly competitive global economy. However, it will require significant effort to address the underlying issues that are holding the country back from its full potential. So, as we watch these developments unfold, it is crucial for Canadian policymakers to recognize the bigger picture and take proactive steps to ensure that Canada remains competitive on the world stage. So, what do you think? Do you believe Canada can overcome these challenges, or are the impacts of U.S. policy changes too great? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video and want to stay up to date with the latest news, be sure to like, share, and subscribe to Breaking Bulletin. We'll keep you informed on the most pressing issues affecting the global economy, politics, and more. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.